All right, how's everybody doing? Welcome back to You Don't Know Ball here in the studio. Got a fun show for you guys today. We're going to be doing best case scenario, worst case scenario for every team. Hunter here did me a favor. He gave me a list of things that I have. So I have, my options. The options read as follows. We have Super Bowl contenders, deep playoff run, early round exit, fringe playoff team, 500, top 10 pick, top 5 pick, tank for Caleb Williams. So we got a lot of options, a lot of things in between. Let's get started. Let's have some fun. All right, let's start off with the Arizona Cardinals. Best case for me is that the Cardinals go 500. Here's why. Like I said before with the power rankings, the Cardinals just don't have a ton of talent right now. Got some good young pieces. You got Kyler, but at the end of the day, the roster's just lacking a ton. But if they can find a way for Kyler to get back in here right around the midway point of the year, maybe a little bit earlier before the midway point of the year, there's definitely gonna have a chance. But again, they have to win every close game because there really isn't even that many worse teams in them. They'd have to pull out a few miracles. Again, it's possible, just certainly is not likely. And then worst case for the Cardinals, absolutely, in my opinion, is gonna be tanking for Caleb Williams. I know, obviously, if you're a Cardinals fan, you don't mind Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has a lot of talent, and it would be a little bit scary leaving Kyler behind for somebody who is per se unproven, but that's the point, is Caleb Williams is just the guy. And if you don't think he's the guy, you just need to go watch more Caleb Williams. You'll realize. But irregardless, point is, I think the Cardinals, just like any other franchise, are going to take that shot if they can take that shot. If they end up in a situation where they're going to be drafted number 1, number 2, number 3, if it's not number 1, try to trade up. I'm just saying, man, Kyler, good quarterback, but if worse comes to worse and the Cardinals perform up to what we expect them to do, which is going to be worst team in the league, one of the worst teams in the league, I see no way that they don't take the shot on, Caleb Williams. All right, next up here, we got the Indianapolis Colts. And for me, similar to the Cardinals, best case scenario is just got to be 500. So if they were to hit best case scenario, a few things would have to happen. Number 1, A-Rich is just going to have to hit the ground absolutely running. There's not going to be much time for a lot of mistakes. He's going to have to be playing very similar to how Cam Newton did right off the jump, just coming in, surprising a lot of people, being very pro-ready, even when we expected him to have a lot of growing pains. That would have to be the first thing that would have to happen. The next thing that's going to have to happen is they have to win a lot of their divisional games. I think if they're going to ever find a way getting close to 500, a majority of those games would come within the division because the division is so weak. Now, again, though, they're the weakest team, arguably. They're one of the 2 weakest teams in the division. So it's not like that's going to be an easy task to just go and win all their division games. And then finally, too, Jonathan Taylor's going to be a huge part of it if that was to happen. Jonathan Taylor going again for another 2,000, whatever, 1,900, 1,800 yard year. That's the only thing I think, if you combined all those, Colts are going to find themselves anywhere near 500. And then worst case scenario for the Colts is going to be a top 5 pick. I don't have them tanking for Caleb because you just took your shot on A-Rich. You got to give it some time to work. You got to let him develop. Worst case, though, certainly could be a top 5. I mean, it could be right there. It could be very low. They could finish 3-4 wins. I feel like it's about as low as it could get. But I can certainly see it happening. I mean, it's going to be a tough year. And also with the Colts roster, again, there's just still a lot of holes. Defensive backs, shaky. Interior and right side of the O-line, definitely still a little shaky. Got some nice receiving core pieces, but again, nothing amazing. Just right now, the Colts, growing pains. On to the Houston Texans. Say for the Houston Texans, again, best case scenario, it's going 500. Worst case scenario, the Texans have a unique one. Truly. I literally had to pull an audible on this one, Hunter, because the worst case scenario for the Texans is you don't improve at all and you don't have the first round pick that you traded away to the Cardinals. That's just the ultimate worst case scenario for the Texans. But I'll talk about the best case scenario first. Best case scenario, going 500. Again, a few things got to happen. Number 1, very similar to the A-Rich situation, is that CJ Stroud's got to step in right away and really not miss a lot of beats. Number 2 is that John Mechie would have to step in this rookie year. Is it his rookie year? How does that work? So what would be John Mechie's rookie year, he'd have to break out in now because he's going to be playing this year. Their second round pick last year. Got a chance. Coming back from leukemia diagnosis. Glad to have you back. We're glad to hear that. Serious note, John Mechie, that's awesome. And then the final thing that would have to happen is that DeMeco Ryans would have to come in, have this defense playing similar to how the 49ers were playing last year. Obviously, I'm kidding. But if you can get them, playing up to standard, a huge jump from last year, that's definitely one of the things that'd be in line to make this team be around a 500 finish. But then that worst case scenario, what would happen to make that worst case scenario is just if this team to make a jump. If CJ Stroud comes in, plays poorly, offense plays poorly again, defense plays poorly again. Certainly not what Texans fans want. It's not what I want to see for them either. But again, if DeMeco Ryans isn't the guy, CJ Stroud's not the guy, well, hey, it certainly is possible. I don't think that's going to be the case. But again, that's the worst case scenario. Absolutely. On to the Tennessee Titans. Best case scenario I'm thinking for them is going to be about going 500. What would have to happen for the Titans to go 500? Obviously, we're going to need Derrick Henry to carry the load again. Derrick Henry with this receiving core, with the QB situation, there's just no way, there's no 2 ways around it. Derrick Henry's going to have to carry the offense again. Number 2, and I think this is almost just the recipe for them to go 500 in of itself. It's actually kind of simple. It's just Derrick Henry balling. And then that defense that we know is a good unit. A lot of stout names in this defense. Got Arden Key, D'Amico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, Kevin Byard. There's a lot of good names on this defense. Just need them to play all up to standard. Run game gets going. 500, definitely not likely. Certainly a possibility for the Titans. But then worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for the Titans has got to be tanking for Caleb Williams. If Tannehill makes a huge regression, Will Levis is not ready to step in yet. Will Levis plays bad if he steps in. We know that the receiving core is just subpar. Titans' issues end up being mainly offensive, but the offense is lacking so much that if things truly hit the fan the worst way possible, I think certainly, and again, you just have to Will Levis, but it doesn't matter. If you got a chance to take Caleb Williams, you're going to take Caleb Williams. It is what it is. On to the Chicago Bears. I think best case scenario for the Bears, oddly enough, fringe playoff team. So with the Bears, what things come down to most of why I would consider them to be a fringe playoff team is, again, Justin Fields is really intriguing. If Justin Fields makes a huge leap this year, really gets clicking with the receiving core, John Wright steps in and plays amazing, and the offense makes a huge leap, they got some names on the defense. They could certainly make it work. Again, too, the division, competitive division, if they can dominate the division, certainly is possible for them. Again, the O-line's coming together now. They added a lot of good names to the defense this offseason. If Kyler Gordon can make a big jump too, that'd be really important. I know it sounds like a stretch right now, but a fringe playoff team for the Bears definitely seems possible. But then worst case scenario, certainly we're flipping back hard across the spectrum here. The Bears fans don't want to hear, but it's true, would be tanking for Caleb Williams. I understand right now, Justin's the guy. Justin's your guy's guy. You want to give Justin that shot. Hopefully Justin makes that leap this year. But again, if he doesn't, and you guys have a chance to grab Caleb Williams, there's just no way to me that you guys don't do it. Very similar to what I was saying about Kyler Murray. It doesn't matter that a guy's already a talented quarterback. I'll even also compare this whole Caleb Williams situation to kind of the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing. Having a good guy doesn't matter. You're trying to get the guy. If Justin doesn't make the leap and the Bears finish very poorly again, they're certainly going to be in line to potentially grab Caleb, and that's got to be their worst case scenario. All right, on to the Los Angeles Rams. Best case scenario for the Rams has got to be going 500. First and foremost, they still have Sean McVay, which is huge. You got Sean McVay, you got a chance to win. Still got Stafford, Kupp, and AD, but then that's really the problem. The roster drops off so much after that. But those three names equate for so much talent. If those three guys can gel and get their side of the ball going every game of the year, they can win every close game. They can pull out a fair number of divisional games. Finishing 500 is such a bleak possibility, but with the Hall of Fame names they got on the roster, I would just feel wrong saying that they didn't have a chance to go 500. But then worst case scenario, absolutely for the Rams, is tanking for Caleb Williams. If this roster regresses like they did last year and things just keep getting worse, there's no doubt about it. The Rams could find themselves drafting first, taking a shot on Caleb Williams. It's just really not that complicated. That's just how the Rams season is going to go. On to the Green Bay Packers. I think for the Green Bay Packers, best case scenario is going to be 500. So starting off, you still got LaFleur. He's proved he's a good coach. He proves he can hold things together. I think he holds a lot of weight on this Packers roster. Number two, you guys know I've been saying it. I like Jordan Love. Think he's going to come in, surprise a lot of people. Still got good names on the defense. Still got Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, Devondre Campbell. Trenches on both sides are still very solid. The Packers are no doubt lacking a lot at plenty of positions. But again, we know they have the pedigree. We know normally they compete. If Jordan Love can step in and be the guy, I see no way that they couldn't go 500. Worst case scenario is going to be tanking for Caleb Williams. Let's say Jordan Love's not the guy. The young offensive weapons don't play up to par. Defense regresses again. The Packers easily could be drafting for Caleb. And something else I wanted to note here was that if you look at both sides of the ball, in total, the Packers are going to have 3 starters that are rookies. If those rookies aren't playing well, it's going to have a big impact on the team. That's how I view the Packers season going. On to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm thinking their best case scenario is going to be a fringe playoff team. First thing was just going to be Baker Mayfield showing up and balling out. Unlikely, but hey, we saw him do it on the Rams last year. He showed up, surprised a lot of people. Maybe he gets to come throw to a great core. One of the best cores he's ever had, if not the best receiving core he's ever had. The Bucs still have a very, very solid defensive unit with great trenches. When you got great trenches, you always got a chance. But then worst case scenario for the Bucs, absolutely is going to be tanking for Caleb Williams. Baker comes in, plays terrible. More than anything, too, I think the thing I thought would be the biggest potential reason that something like this would happen for the Bucs was because they've been a team that's kind of struggled with the injury bug recently. Sometimes the star players get hurt, keep getting hurt. If that would have happened this year, especially with the receiving core and the D-line, and Baker wasn't playing well, I think that would be the recipe for them tanking for Caleb. On to the Atlanta Falcons. For me, best case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons is going to be an early round exit. How could that happen? Desmond Ritter's got to make a huge leap. He showed some flashes last year, more than anything, very inconsistent. I liked him in college. I think he's got a chance to come in and be a good pro. We're going to have to see how he does this year. But on both sides of the ball, the Falcons have got great trenches. That's so important. If you've been listening for a while, you know how I feel about trenches. I'm always going to feel this way. Having trenches is the most important thing. The Falcons got good trenches on both sides of the ball. And then finally, Bijan's just going to have to go crazy. I'm sure that's the plan, though. though, is feed Bijan, let Bijan move the ball, let Bijan move the clock, control the game that way. The Falcons can do that and win all their close games. I certainly can see them making the playoffs, being an early round exit. It certainly is possible. And then I think worst case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons is going to be a top 10 pick. This is the highest floor we've seen so far for a team for their, worst case scenario. So it's good to see, Falcons fans. I think for me, what it came down to is just that if worst case does happen and Desmond Ridder makes no leap, offense is playing subpar, so is the defense. I think they've showed us, though, they can win a few close games, can win some division games. And I just don't think that their floor is being absolutely horrible. I think if worse come to worse, yeah, we could find them picking in the top 10. But I don't think the Falcons are going to have an atrocious season by any means, even if things go very bad. On to the Washington Commanders. Best case scenario for the Commanders, I got as being an early round exit. Sam Howell would have to come in and ball out. We saw in North Carolina, Sam Howell definitely has the tools to be a very good quarterback. It's just a matter of making it work in the NFL now. But he's got the arm, got a good receiving core. Now it's up to him. And this defense, they already got a real good defense, built really well at a lot of position groups. If they can come in and just play up to standard, that's been the issue recently, is that they've had a good defense, they just haven't been playing up to that standard. Come in this year, play how we expect them to play. Commanders got a floor to be a very solid team. Worst case scenario is a huge difference from the best case scenario. Because for me, the worst case scenario is going to be picking top 5. And how does that happen? Simply if the offense just can't get going again, and Sam Howell's playing very poorly, Sam Howell's not the guy. And then on top of that, the injury bug the Commanders sometimes deal with, and if the defense underperforms again, no doubt, the floor for this team could really be picking top 5. Doesn't seem likely, certainly though, possible. On to the Carolina Panthers, whose best case scenario I see being a fringe playoff team. And if that were to happen, well, number one, just like a lot of teams, especially with the rookies, Bryce is going to have to come in right away, play very, very solid. If not solid, very good. They gave him the receiving core. He's got a solid O-line, have to step in and make it work. And then number 2 is just seeing a lot of the young guys that have been playing really well make another big leap. I'm talking about guys like Brian Burns, Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin, Terrace Marshall, Frankie Louvu, JC Horn. They got a lot of them. The point is, they all need to make jumps. Keep it going, keep moving forward. If that happens, can certainly see the Panthers being a fringe playoff team. But worst case scenario for the Panthers, it's a top 5 pick. Let's say Bryce comes in, is shaky, can't find his footing in the pros right away, or even is dealing with injury bugs or some type of injury because of getting used to playing in the NFL. These guys are a lot bigger, we know, size concerns. And then on top of that, the young guys only regress. With the way the roster is built, things could go very south quickly for the Panthers. Very good, it's very bad, there's no in between. We're gonna have to see how things go. On to the New England Patriots, whose best case scenario I had being a fringe playoff team. So for me, the biggest thing, Patriots got a lot of experience on both sides of the ball. Number 2, they got good trenches on both sides, especially on defense. Very stout defense to most position groups. And they got Belichick. The Patriots, we know, got the pedigree as well. It's certainly not a stretch to say they could be a wild card team. Mac Jones would have to step in, come play really well this year. Back to rookie year form almost. Juju comes in, has a really productive year like he did with the Chiefs last year. Josh Uche, Matthew Judon also have another big year. Kyle Duggar plays awesome again. Fringe playoff team is definitely not impossible for the Patriots. And then worst case scenario I had was being a top 10 pick. This is Belichick we're talking about. The Patriots might play poorly again. The Patriots might not be a good team again, but I don't think they're going to ever be a terrible team, especially under his leadership. More than anything too is if that were to happen, I think what it comes down to is just going to be the offense. If the offense isn't producing, things could be very similar to last year. The defense could be holding it down. If the offense isn't going to do their job, it is what it is. Patriots might lose a lot of games. That's what this is going to come down to. On to the Denver Broncos. Best case scenario for the Broncos, I'm thinking, is a fringe playoff team. So for the best case scenario, obviously, Sean Payton comes in, gets the guys rolling. That's what I think's going to happen. Hit the ground running. The offense gets clicking with the new trenches. Brought in Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey. Russ gets back to cooking. And again, back to the trenches. Those defensive trenches are very solid as well. Love the Broncos D-back group. Fringe playoff team is definitely not a stretch for the Broncos. And then worst case scenario, I'm thinking is a top 10 pick. With Sean Payton coming in, I'm just telling you, even from experience, Saints fan here, the Broncos could play I'm trying to think how to word this. The Broncos could have another, per se, poor season, and it's just not going to be what it was last year. When the Saints had Drew was injured for like 7 games of the year. We're bringing in all these different starters, Teddy B, rotating all these guys. Sean was still making it work. We were still pulling out close games. When the offense would get worse, the defense would get better. When the defense would play worse, the offense would play better. Sean Payton's just that type of guy. He's going to put this team in situations where they're going to be able to play, even if they're not going to win the game, a close game, and even sometimes games they shouldn't be in, keeping them in where they pull it out in a weird way. That's the Sean Payton effect. I think he's going to bring that to the Broncos. Broncos fans, you should be cheesing. But again, worst comes to worst. Russ doesn't cook. Offense underperforms again. Defense has the injury bug. There's no doubt that the floor for the Broncos could be picked in the top 10. On to the Las Vegas Raiders. So for the best case scenario Raiders, I'm thinking early playoff exit. Look, like we've been saying, we know this offense is going to put up points. A lot of good names on the offense. Them being an early round playoff exit team is going to come down to their young defenders making a leap. If Trevon Moehrig, Marcus Epps, Divine Diablo, Jerry Tillery, and David Long can all make big jumps this year, the Raiders defense could be really a solid unit. I can totally see them being an early round exit playoff team. Worst case scenario for the Raiders is easily being a top 10 pick. Let's say Jimmy G comes in, just does not play up to standard, plays very poorly. The year off rubs him the wrong way. And on top of that, the defense just shits the bed. Can we put it like this? If those young defenders don't make a jump, the defense is very poor, just like has been. And if that's the case with Jimmy G playing poorly, it's recipe for a top 10 pick. On to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So best case scenario for the Steelers, I'm thinking early round exit. Let's start out with what the Steelers have that is elite. They're a trench group. Got good trenches on both sides of the ball. Most important thing. Very similar to the Patriots. The Steelers have a lot of experience on both sides of the ball. Important for making playoff runs. But the most important thing that's going to have to happen for the Steelers to do anything along those lines is Kenny P making a big leap. A lot of this season just comes down to Kenny P. Kenny P makes a big leap, sky's the limit for the Steelers. But then worst case scenario is easily being a top 10 pick. Kenny P doesn't move the needle, plays poorly. A few guys in the O-line get injured. The receiving core is all right, nothing incredible. All of a sudden, the offense isn't doing anything to win you games. You're relying all on the defense, which is a story we've seen a few times with the Steelers recently. If that were to happen, Steelers could find themselves picking in the top 10. On to the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cleveland Browns got some exciting about this, and that's that they're the first team whose best case scenario is being a Super Bowl contender. The Browns have a stacked roster. Not only that, they got the Deshaun, Nick Chubb backfield, and you know me and my trenches, man. Both trenches are stacked. Kevin Stefanski's still leading the boys. One-time coach of the year. He's got the juice. So best case scenario is Deshaun steps in right away, ball's out. Nick Chubb runs the ball great again. Defense is playing great along with the offense. There's no doubt the Browns could be Super Bowl contenders. Worst case scenario though, again, far off from that. It's picking in the top 10. Let's say Deshaun steps in, plays very poorly. Star players for the Browns dealing with some injury bugs. Kevin Stefanski does a lackluster job. Certainly is possible. Browns could find themselves drafted in the top 10. On to the Minnesota Vikings. I got the best case scenario for the Vikings being a deep playoff run. When the roster's healthy, there's no doubt. For the Vikings, you're fairly stacked. Daniil Hunter, TJ Hawkinson, Jay Jettas, Dalvin Cook, Jordan Addison, young stud coming in, Harrison Smith, Marcus Davenport too when he's healthy. That Jettas-Addison combo, not even just them individually, combo is going to be so hard to defend. Look, if Kirk steps in, plays good how he has been past few years, regular season Kirk, I guess. I'm just kidding. If Kirk can do that, the Vikings absolutely can make a deep playoff run. Like I say about a few QBs though, it's just so hard for me to see Kirk lifting that Lombardi, which is why I don't have them as a Super Bowl contender. But I can see the Vikings making a deep playoff run. Worst case scenario for the Vikings is finding their way into the top 10. And how will that happen? Now hear me out. How could they go from last year to finding their way down to drafting the top 10? Well, it's actually a very simple recipe. Number one, they don't win their close games. It didn't get talked about that much. And I don't remember the exact number. The Vikings had won a high single-digit number of one-score games last year. So games that either were like they won by 3 or 7 or 8. You get my point. That was happening a lot. The Vikings don't win those games. It's a whole different story. And if they didn't do that with a lot of their games, it's a completely different story. So that would have to be the case for the Vikings to find their way in the top 10. On to the New Orleans Saints. I got best case scenario for the Saints being a deep playoff run. Number one with the Saints, well-built trenches on both sides of the ball. Again, I know it's not like a broken record with my trenches, but I'm always gonna. The Saints have a lot of fun pieces on offense that I think are gonna have a big breakout this year. What we really need is for Derek Carr to come in, play at an elite level again for us right away. The young guys in the defense need to make big jumps as well. Dennis Allen would have to show us he's the guy. And most importantly for the Saints is that they can take advantage of a weak division and they can put themselves into a very good spot for the playoffs. Now, worst case scenario, Derek Carr steps in and plays very poorly, plays how he did last year. And then on top of that, we struggle with health again. Year before struggled so much. It's one of the highest injury rates in the NFL. That happens again, along with Derek Carr playing poorly. There's no doubt the floor for the Saints is drafting top 10. All right, on to the Seattle Seahawks. Best case for the Seahawks, I'm thinking, is a deep playoff run. So if they were to make a deep playoff run, I think the first thing that's got to happen is that those young defensive studs have got to make another big leap. Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, Chenna Nwosu. Young guys were holding down the defense last year. You already got guys playing really well in the defense as well. Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner back, Quandre Diggs. Then on the offensive side, you got a great offensive cast, arguably one of the best in the league. Geno makes another big leap this year. Sky's kind of the limit for the Seahawks. But then worst case scenario for the Seahawks, I'm sorry, it's got to be picking top 10. Let's say the young studs from last year regress, don't make big leaps, and or play a lot worse. And then on top of that, Geno was just a fluke. If those were to happen, there's no doubt the Seahawks could make a huge downward spiral in 1 year. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but that certainly is the worst case scenario. On to the New York Giants. Best case scenario for the Giants, we're thinking deep playoff run. All right, let's say Daniel Jones keeps improving. You already got a really good defensive unit with guys that made big jumps last year. Guys who make more leaps on that defense. You got some new weapons for Daniel Jones. Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, Darren Waller. John Michael Schmidt got him a new center. The Giants are surrounding Daniel Jones, and they're saying, prove to us that you're the guy. We just paid you. Take us to the promised land. Now, obviously, that's not easy, but the point is, they're surrounding Daniel Jones, so he has no excuses. Brian Dable coaches another great year. Ceiling for the Giants is having a deep playoff run. Worst case scenario, though, drafted in the top 10. If the worst case were to happen, look, the O-line is a huge question mark. If John Michael Schmidt plays poorly, left guard situation still poor, Evan Neal still not playing great, that could get shaky quickly. Let's say the new weapons aren't playing up to standard. Let's say Daniel Jones regresses. The Giants have another health struggle. If all that were to combine, Giants could be finding themselves drafted in the top 10. On to the Baltimore Ravens. There's no doubt, best case scenario for the Ravens has got to be Super Bowl contenders. Look, man, it's simple too. The offense is electric. The defense is stacked. The Ravens are one of those rosters where now that you got Lamar back, a lot of things are in place to make some moves. The Ravens really one of the simplest teams for this too. Sorry for how short this is going to be, Ravens fans, but it's just because you guys have a simple recipe for either success or failure. And if things were to fail and the floor happens where the Ravens find themselves drafting in the top 10, well, I think it's very simple. And that would just come down to Lamar being hurt or not being able to play for a majority time at the beginning of the year, where you take a lot of weeks of him playing off the schedule. Now, if that happens, we know how much the Ravens revolve around Lamar. That certainly could bring them into the worst case scenario, which is drafting the top 10. On to the Los Angeles Chargers. Best case scenario for the Chargers, I'm thinking Super Bowl contenders. Look, overall, the Chargers got a good defensive unit. Not only that, you got Justin Herbert. Brandon Staley, not sure how you feel about him. Certain things on the team, shaky. That's the point too, I want to make clear. Chargers, of all the Super Bowl contenders I have, might be the least complete. But you know they got Justin Herbert. And the QB moves the needle a lot. Justin Herbert's kind of guy where even when his team's playing poorly, he plays an elite day, can find a way to win you the game 38-35, 41-38. So the point is, he holds you in the games, even when you shouldn't be. When you got a guy like that with the offensive core they have as well, a lot of good names on the offense. You added Quentin Johnson this offseason, who I think is going to have a great career over there. There's no doubt, best case scenario, Chargers making a Super Bowl run. Now, worst case scenario would be to go about 500. Let's say this defense continues to regress. The big names on the defense don't play very well. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, JC Jackson has another rough year again. And let's say Herbert gets hurt again for a fair period of time or a long period of time. Chargers could definitely find themselves falling into that 500 range. On to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Best case scenario for the Jaguars? Feels weird to say, but man, Super Bowl contenders? Well, look, let's start off with the obvious. They're in a weak division. Find ways to win almost all of, if not all of, divisional games. You're going to be putting yourself in a great home field spot potentially for the playoffs. They're a young team that made a big leap last year. Make another big leap. A lot of the young guys make another one this year. They're going to be making a lot of noise over there. And not only that, the offense is stacked. Throw in Calvin Ridley to this unit. Man, the sky's the limit. Worst case scenario for the Jaguars, I'm thinking is to be going about 500, just like the Chargers. It would just be star players struggling to stay healthy. Anything were to happen to Trevor Lawrence, the wheels could fall off very quickly. But I don't see that happening. I think the Jaguars got a very solid season ahead of them. On to the Detroit Lions. My best case scenario for them is making a deep playoff run. And you're probably asking yourself, you have the Lions ranked higher than some of these teams that you have making a Super Bowl run. Why is their ceiling making the deep playoff run and not the Super Bowl run? Let me answer that for you right away. Number one, and I think it's the most important thing so far, the Lions are going to have 5 rookies in total that will be starting on both sides, combined on both sides of the ball. That's a lot of people with not a lot of experience. And again, making deep playoff runs, making Super Bowl runs, a lot of times comes down to the experience, the little nuances, recognizing little things, and they're just not going to have that necessarily. Lions have tons of talent. They have a stacked offense. They got Dan Campbell. If Jared Goff makes another big leap, keeps playing like his old self, in the long term, the sky's the limit for the Lions. But it just really comes down to the fact that those 5 rookies, it's going to be really hard to make a Super Bowl run when that is the case. And then worst case scenario for the Lions, I'm thinking would be hovering right around 500. Let's say Goff regresses. On top of that, the rookie class, especially the rookies that'll be starting, just aren't playing very well, aren't playing up to par. That certainly is the recipe for the Lions falling back to around 500. On to the New York Jets. Best case scenario for the Jets definitely has got to be Super Bowl contenders. Look, you bring in Aaron Rodgers to a team team last year who already, in spite of their quarterback situation, found a way to win 7 games. You bring in one of the greatest of all time with a very young, loaded receiving core. They brought in Mecole Hardman too, straight speedster for Aaron. Allen Lazard, his boy from Green Bay. There's a lot of things about the Jets that are exciting. Like I was saying about the defense too. So many studs, so many young studs. Will McDonald's going to be very exciting to see on this D-line rotating in and out. So much to love about the Jets. The worst case scenario I'm thinking is about 500. How would that happen? Well, I think number one, when you look at the Jets roster, the trenches are still a question mark. Mekhi Becton, Joe Tippmann, we don't know about, especially those two. And that's already more than a 30-year line. Don't know how we feel about the tight end situation either, per se. And I think the only other thing you'd have to worry about, the Jets falling to their worst case scenario, would be if something would happen to A-Rod. He's getting older, something happens to the leg, something happens to the arm, something's sore, missing a few games over something like that. Things like that would have to add up over time. And although it's not likely, it is possible. On to the Miami Dolphins. Best case scenario for the Dolphins, Super Bowl contenders. Look, when you ignore the QB situation, the Dolphins are undoubtedly one of those teams you'd rank up there with the best rosters in the entire league. And that's not a shot against Tua. It's just that when you combine usually the best rosters in the league right now, a lot of them do have that upper echelon guy. You just can't put Tua in that category yet. The Dolphins have a speedy, loaded offense. They have a star-powered defense. You know me and my trenches, man. They got stacked trenches. Let me not seem like I'm talking bad on Tua. When Tua was playing healthy last year, he was balling out, no doubt. With Tua, mainly the concussion concern. Can Tua stay healthy? I certainly don't know. It's a very odd situation around him over there. But if he can, the sky is absolutely the limit for the Dolphins. Worst case scenario, I got him sitting about 500. And the only thing I could see that would lead them into that area is just Tua's health. If Tua doesn't stay healthy, Tua struggles, Tua misses a majority of the year, we know the Dolphins make a huge regression without their guy. That's Mike McDaniel's guy too. He showed us they have a good connection. They work well. Onto the San Francisco 49ers. Best case scenario, to nobody's surprise for the Niners, is going to be making a Super Bowl run potentially. They've already showed us they can multiple times. The Niners have the pedigree. Kyle Shanahan has the pedigree. There's no question about it. They have a fantastic offense and a fantastic defense. Both sides of the ball are already basically complete. And then Brock Purdy stepped in last year, surprised all of us, but showed us, hey man, look, looking like the guy. Certainly was the guy last year. You got to come back from injury, show that you're still the guy. I don't have many doubts that he's going to come back and play up to standard again. That 49ers offense, not too complicated. Like I said, so many weapons. Almost it's like, how could he? If Purdy keeps developing and they can stay healthy, especially to start players, Super Bowl run, very, very possible. And I think worst case scenario for them is to be going about 500. And how would that happen? Brock makes a huge regression, or he gets injured, something's wrong with him. Trey steps in. Trey also plays poorly, or something's wrong with Trey too, and you got to go to QB3. QB situation for the Niners is very interesting, because even if you get to QB3, you got Sam Darnold. We aren't going to go there though. Hopefully Brock can be the guy for them, and I'm sure that's what Niners fans want as well. Also, the other thing that I could see happening that would really put this team into a downward trajectory, if they have more issues with the star players staying healthy, especially Nick Bosa. This team is definitely at its best when Nick Bosa is rushing the passer, disrupting the run. On to the Buffalo Bills. Best case scenario for the Bills, it's got to be being a Super Bowl contender. Now, worst case scenario, the Bills have got superstars on both sides of the ball. Got Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Von Miller, Tre'Davious White, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen. The names go on and on. You got Sean McDermott coaching the boys, great coach, and a great group of defensive linemen that just rotate. And every single one of them's coming in. They're going to be mean. They're going to disrupt things. That's the Bills. If the Bills stay healthy, Josh Allen gets off of that weird little phase he's been in, making weird decisions, turning the ball over way too much unnecessarily. Again, we know there's no doubt. The Bills have showed us they can be Super Bowl contenders. Now, worst case scenario for the Bills, though, mess around, be around that 500 territory. How would that happen? I have the most bullet points for the Bills of all my teams here that I have the Super Bowl contenders. The Bills go awry when Josh Allen starts to go awry. If Josh Allen's over here fumbling the ball, doing crazy stuff, trying to do too much, throwing turnovers that are unnecessary. The offensive line's playing poorly again too. And nobody besides Stephon steps up. Stephon's been carrying way too much to load recently. It's like everyone else can't step up. That's not a recipe for success. Stephon can't be carrying the load every single time, especially in big playoff games. You need Gabe Davis to step up. You need Deontay Hardy to step in and have a big year for you like he did for the Saints 2 years ago. The Bills certainly are unique in their issues, but these issues are certainly fixable. On to the Dallas Cowboys. Unless you're an NFC East fan, I think we'd all be on the same page. The Cowboys are in line to be Super Bowl contenders. And truly, the Cowboys are really not that complicated. They're just absolutely stacked on both sides of the ball. Good head coach, good defensive coordinator everyone likes. The Cowboys have pedigree. We know the story of the Cowboys, man. They always have the roster, but they can't get it done. This Cowboys roster just feels a little bit different. They got a few extra star players that I normally have. These young, budding stars are just so electric. I've never seen the Cowboys with a more exciting young group of defenders. Tyron Smith and Zach Martin take another leap up because we had a little bit of an off year last year. This team could absolutely make a Super Bowl run. But let's say the worst case scenario of falling to 500 happens. Well, how could that be? Let's say Dak regresses again. That would be very rough. Gotta keep those interception numbers down. If he keeps those interceptions up, keeps turning the ball over, there's no telling how things might go. And then also, let's say an injury bug hits the trenches, offense or defense. Trenches really do carry both sides of this team. If anything happens to those trench groups, we can see the wheels fall off quickly. On to the Cincinnati Bengals. Come on, you already know the best case scenario, Super Bowl contenders. Come on, you guys know the flow by now. What makes them Super Bowl contenders? Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow, especially that combination. You got a great offensive group with a nearly complete defense. And I only say nearly complete because, especially after Jesse Bates leaving, not really sure I feel about the safety situation over here. Early point of the year, midway through the year, maybe a couple of trades. I think the Bengals will figure that out. Not too worried about the safety situation. Left guard situation, right tackle situation, maybe still a little bit concerning too. But Joe Burrow showed us, man, the O-line can be underperforming and he'll be overperforming. They can never play as poorly as they did for those first 4 weeks last year, but I don't see it ever getting that bad again. That was almost like as bad as it could ever get in the Joe Burrow era. Knock on some wood. But let's say the worst case scenario happens and the Bengals somehow fall to 500. Again, how could that be? Well, like a lot of other teams, if something happens to Joe Burrow, and in tangent, like I was saying, if that O-line is underperforming again, I don't see it happening. And the worst case is simply Joe Burrow getting hurt because the O-line's underperforming. If that were to happen, that changes the trajectory of the season infinitely. Onto the Philadelphia Eagles. You already know the Philadelphia Eagles are obviously Super Bowl contenders. And it's really just not even that complicated. It's really not. They're absolutely stacked on both sides of the ball. They have so many big names on both sides. James Bradbury, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, Hassan Reddick, Darius Slay, Devontae Smith, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift. If I counted correctly, I think I just listed 14 players and they're starting 22. You get my point, man. The Eagles are absolutely stacked. What is complicated would have to be what would happen if they were to fall to 500, which I have as the worst case scenario. Well, if anything happens to Jalen Hurts, your guy, well, that puts you in the first place where that would be a huge trajectory changer. But then also, let's say last year's stars, Darius Slay, Bradbury, A.J. Brown. Let's say they were somehow to have all a huge regression at the same time. Maybe a few of them dealing with injuries. It'd have to be a lot of things happening. I think the Eagles at their floor are going to have another really good year. To finish out, we got the Kansas City Chiefs. I wonder what I'm going to do for the Chiefs. We know the Chiefs, Super Bowl contenders, man. The Chiefs are stacked on both sides of the ball. Oh, you want me to list the star power for the Chiefs like I did for the Eagles? L'Jarius Sneed, Justin Reed, Nick Bolton, Chris Jones, Kadarius Toney, Travis Kelce, Creed Humphrey, Joe Tooney. Oh, how could I forget the legendary Patrick Mahomes? You combine all that star power with Andy Reid, you already know, won the Super Bowl last year. They're going to be competing for the Super Bowl again this upcoming year. But let's say somehow the worst case scenario would happen, which is falling to 500. Obviously, something would have to happen to Pat. Not only that, if this defense regressed again and just played incredibly poorly, and I'm talking so poor that it would have to be in basically the same thing as like circa 2013 New Orleans Saints with Drew Brees. And I just don't see that happening. It's pretty hard to get to a level of playing that poorly on defense. That is the worst case scenario by far. Thanks so much for checking out this video, spending your time with us here. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you click subscribe, drop a like on the video. It helps us out a ton. And also check us out on TikTok and Instagram.